Our word of the week this week is locust. Let's take a look. So the Greek word for locust is akris. It's a grasshopper or locust. And we find in the New Testament two very different usages of this word. First, it's used as food for humans, and then it's used to describe an apocalyptic beast in Revelation. So before we get into the New Testament use, if you're interested in what the Old Testament has to say on kosher and non-kosher insects, that is found in Leviticus chapter 11, verses 20 through 23. And there's a pretty comprehensive list of what you can and cannot eat in the bug world and still keep kosher. But food, or let me rephrase, locusts or grasshoppers as food in the New Testament is shown two times, both referring to John the Baptist. Let's take a look in Matthew chapter 3, verse 4, and Mark chapter 1, verse 6. These are both from the ESV with the Koine supplied. Now John wore a garment of camel hair and a leather belt around his waist, and his food was locusts, akrides, and wild honey. Now to Mark 1. Now John was clothed with camel's hair and wore a leather belt around his waist and ate locusts, akridas, and wild honey. Now, someone probably looked and said, well, Matthew has akrides and Mark has akridas. Why are they different? It's the sentence structure. In Matthew, it's genitive plural because it says, literally it says, his supper was of locusts and of wild honey in the genitive. And then Mark says he was eating locusts and wild honey in the accusative plural, the direct object of the participle eating. Okay, so through the years, people have claimed that these weren't actually locusts, but these were carob pods. Some have said that the nickname for a pod was a locust because it had a similar shape or some such thing. My suspicion, and this is just surmising on my part, is that there was a period in history where people were terribly uncomfortable with the thought that John the Baptist was eating bugs. But remember, the Old Testament gives a clear delineation between what bugs were kosher and what weren't. It's not an uncommon thing, and so for us to try and twist this into something that makes us comfortable is, number one, not our job, and number two, potentially changes the meaning of what the text says. So in reality, in Arabia, in parts of Africa, in Syria, and even in recent days in Israel, eating locusts and grasshoppers is not an uncommon thing. In Israel, it's becoming a more and more popular thing as an alternative protein source. I want to show you a photo that I took in 2006. Get a load of this fine beast. This was taken in Kagiso, South Africa, where we were milling about a site, a construction site for a school, and one of the guys I was hanging around with grabbed this giant grasshopper and showed it to me and said, at different times of the year, these are thought of as a delicacy among locals. And I was delighted that it was not that time of year and that I was not asked to participate in this delicacy. Some have argued that akris is erroneously used here in place of this word, enkris. And enkris is a pancake baked in oil taken from the accounts of the manna in the wilderness from Numbers 11, verse 8, and Exodus 16, verse 31. But here's the thing. If we look at the two verses that we saw with the word for locusts in Matthew and in Mark, there are no variants recorded for either one. There's no linguistic evidence that there's ever been any conflation between akris and enkris, and there's no concrete textual evidence for us to conclude that Matthew or Mark wanted us to understand John the Baptist as eating anything other than actual locusts, the insects, not carob pods, not pancakes, nothing else. The thing is that this may not appeal to us. It certainly doesn't appeal to me, but it doesn't have to. My allegiance is supposed to be to the text as it was written and not to my sensibilities. It doesn't matter how I feel about John the Baptist eating locusts, and now is the uncomfortable part. It doesn't matter, or it shouldn't matter, how you feel about John the Baptist eating locusts. What matters is, what did the text say as written? And as best as I can tell, as best as I can dig through the etymology, the different words involved, the choice of akris tells us that John the Baptist ate literal, physical insects that were locusts or grasshoppers or crickets, in keeping with the kosher list in Leviticus 11. Do with that what you will, but let us move on and see the beasts of the fifth trumpet. So in Revelation chapter 9, the fifth trumpet sounds. There's a crack in the earth, there's a deep abyss, and there's smoke pouring out, and here's what we get in verses 3 and 4. Again from the ESV with the Koine supplied. Then from the smoke came locusts, akrides, on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions of the earth. And they were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any green plant or any tree, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. So first and foremost, we're told that they're locusts, but then we're immediately told that they're not like locusts as we know locusts, which are herbivores. These locusts are told not to eat any plants, but to use their unlocust-like, scorpion-esque stinging power to afflict humans. Not all humans, just the humans that did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Now, if you go and read verses 9 through 11 of Revelation chapter 9, verses 7 through 11 of Revelation chapter 9, you'll see some other very interesting things about these locusts. They have armor on like combat horses wear. They have hair like women and face like humans and teeth like lions. So we're told that these are locusts in that they come out like a plague and swarm, but in a great number of ways they're not like locusts at all. So these apocalyptic beasts are described as locusts, and yet have many characteristics that are not like the locusts that are literal locusts that are in the wild, in the animal kingdom, part of the fauna, but they are still described as locusts. So there we have our third example in the New Testament of how this word is used. There's some interesting stuff for you to dig into in the Old Testament, but the real question comes down to this: what's for supper? If we're going to have akris for supper, know that it will be locusts and not carob pods, nor will it be enkris, pancakes made from manna in the wilderness, but it will be the kosher locusts, grasshoppers or crickets as described in Leviticus 11, if you want to eat like John the Baptist. Personally, for me, I'm going to pass on eating like John the Baptist, at least in that regard. I do, however, enjoy wild honey. So akris, grasshoppers, locusts, our word of the week. Hope that was good for you. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, leave me a comment to let me know what you think. And until next time, Charis Kairene Humin, grace and peace to you.